Alright, so today I'm going to be telling you guys how to use an embroidery hoop. So in this picture that I can show you right here, I'm just going to be using a slideshow of different pictures to show you how to use it. So you've got your standard embroidery hoop, and it's made out of 3 different parts essentially. So you've got your inner circle, the smaller one on the inside of this bigger wooden circle on the outside, and then on the outside hoop is this metal screw looking thing attached to 2 plates which are screwed into the outside hoop. So that is pretty much what loosens and tightens your fabric into your hoop. So I'll be telling you how that works. And then the fabric that we're going to be using for this project is called Aida or Aida fabric, and we're using this fabric in particular because this is what all embroiderers and cross-stitchers use for their projects. You can use regular fabric, but it makes it very easy to know where to put your needle next. So if you look closely at your fabric, it has these little tiny holes that are all lined up, and it's pretty much a solid guide for where to put your needle next when you're doing a project, especially for beginners. Alright, so firstly, you're going to take your thumb and index finger and place it on the thicker part of this screw on the right, right where I put those red arrows, showing that you're going to twist the screw towards yourself instead of away from yourself. So twisting the screw towards yourself will make it loosen. And then once you've got that loosened all the way, you can take the screw out and you'll see that you've got your 3 separate parts removed. So once you completely loosen that, you'll have the screw off, and then the outer hoop will loosen up. You can see like the spot that I showed you once you start loosening the screw, the space between the inner hoop and the outer hoop, and that outer hoop will be disconnected from the inner one. Alright, so now that you've loosened the screw, you can either leave it in the metal plate or completely take it out. I've shown it left in, but now you'll have your basically your 2 separate parts besides the screw, so the outer wooden hoop and the inner wooden hoop. So for clarification purposes, I've labeled the larger outside hoop, hoop 1, and then the inside one, hoop 2. Alright, so now you are going to grab your fabric, and what you're going to do is just grab like a big piece of the fabric and take the second hoop, number 2, the smaller one, and place it underneath that big piece of fabric, near the corner, because we're only going to be using part of the fabric and not a huge portion of it. So you'll place that underneath your fabric, and as you can see in the picture, I've kind of underlined the hoop because it's underneath. You can sort of see it there. So don't be placing it on top, you'll be placing it underneath, and then that'll be important for the next step. So this next step is one of the biggest steps and one of the most difficult steps, even though this is a pretty simple process once you get the hang of it. Feel free to watch this video multiple times or even search other videos on YouTube to see more visuals of this. But this is really what secures the fabric in, and so we're going to grab the outside hoop, the first one, the number 1 hoop, and you're going to place that and fit it securely over top of that bottom hoop with the fabric over it. Okay, so once you've gotten that bigger outer hoop placed over top, basically you've got to like squish it down and make sure it goes completely over it. That might be a little difficult, but once you make sure that you've got the inner hoop securely inside of the outer hoop with the fabric around it, then you're good. So in this picture, I've flipped over the entire piece and I'm showing you what the back should look like. So you've got your inner hoop, and you should see inside of it is like basically a flat circle of the fabric, and then on the other side is the rest of the fabric that we're not going to use, kind of like layered out of the outline of the inner one. Now we're going to flip the entire piece over to the front, and we're going to take that screw and put it back into those two metal plates on the top of the number 2 or outer hoop, and instead of twisting it towards yourself like we did it in the first place to loosen it, you're going to put the screw in and then twist it away from you. So that will tighten this outer hoop and make sure that the fabric is squished in between the outer hoop and the inner hoop. And honestly, you can twist it quite a lot. You want to make sure that everything is very tight. So after you've gotten everything secured, I want you to feel around the edge of the outer and inner hoop to make sure that everything feels nice and tight. If it's not, you've got to try that again and you can kind of pull on the fabric left on the outside of the hoop to make sure that it's as tight as possible. And then make sure that you've twisted your screw away from you enough to the point where you've got just a little bit of the screw poking out of the very left metal plate. So now you're basically just going to cut your fabric off of that bigger piece of fabric that you're not going to use in the main project, and you're going to cut it off in a square shape, as you can see that I've got, and I've put little inch marks on each side, so all 4 sides, and I've got that because you want to make sure you've got about half of an inch to an inch of fabric hanging off of the side of the outer hoop. So you won't really have to worry about that until you completely finish with your stitches and everything, because once we're done with that part, we're going to do another step that involves folding in those outer corners and hiding them in the back. So that's pretty much it. Again, if you feel like you did not really understand it this first time, go ahead and go through the video again. And if that doesn't make any sense, you can always contact me and maybe we can set up a Zoom call or something of that sort. I know it's definitely a new thing for most of you probably, so I want to make sure you're understanding it to the best that you can. So thank you, and I hope this was helpful to you.